want to thank Beth for serving as a liturgist this morning, as well as our technical crew and the choir, the ushers and the greeters. And as Beth spoke so very eloquently about that memory that scripture brings for her, it reminds me that that text is often interpreted in very different ways. Some folk think of looking at the hills as a source of power and strength, almost as if they were looking at Mount Zion or Mount Sinai and calling on God and God's power from those locations. And on the other hand, sometimes you can look at the hills in quite a different way, in the sense that we all have mountains and hills in our lives that we have to climb and that represent a threat to us. If you can picture this psalm when it was written, and it is, by the way, poetry, so it's okay to have different interpretations of poetry. But if you can picture the psalmist writing this psalm for someone who's about to go on a journey, and as they look upon the hills, they no doubt are thinking about the bandits that sometimes are concealed in those hills that make travel treacherous and dangerous for travelers. And in that sense, we're reminded that we're travelers too. We're pilgrims. This is not our home. We're journeying through this world, hoping to get home to Jesus one day. Sometimes the journey is rough. Sometimes the traveling is easy. But we know that whether it's up or it's down, this psalm lets us know that we have the joy that whatever happens, God is our keeper. Oh, the words are so lovely. Immediately after gazing at those threatening hills, the psalmist turns and gives us a word of hope. He asks a question, but immediately comes up with an answer. First, looking at the hills, that's dangerous. And so he's asking, where will my help come from if I encounter difficulty, if I have trouble overcoming this mountain in my life? Where will my help come from? And he doesn't miss a beat, but he says, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And then the rest of the psalm is all about putting the flesh on those bones. He said, he will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is my keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand, and the sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. I had to switch over to the old King James verbiage there because, like many of you, I grew up loving it so much. And so as you travel through the valley, you may be looking up on the hillside, maybe not to enjoy the beauty so much, but maybe thinking about the hills and the mountains in your own life that have to be somehow surmounted. And sometimes it seems like they are too big to climb. So many mountains. Some of them are physical. Some of them are disease. Some of them are injury. Some have to do with accidents, and some have to do with the wars in the world. Some have to do with natural disasters. I was reading this week about what the geologists are saying about the earthquake situation that we're facing in our state. And it was interesting because we're very familiar with the San Andreas Fault, but they were pointing out the other day that there's another fault called the Cascadia Fault that's even bigger than the San Andreas Fault, but the Cascadia Fault, which is out in the ocean, but touches the Northern California coast and goes all the way up to Vancouver and British Columbia. That is a possibly even more dangerous earthquake, and they are saying that the last time that earthquake, that fault moved, actually moved this about a week ago, but the last time they had a 9.0 quake was 300 years ago, and many people lost their lives. And so they're saying now that if we have a major movement of that quake, that it will be at least 10,000 people that will lose their lives, and there will be a resulting tsunami. You know how they had the tsunami in Japan, that there will be a tsunami that will affect all of California as well as Japan and those on the other side of the ocean. There are natural disasters that happen that frighten and confuse us, but the word from the psalmist is that God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. That's Psalm 46. Some of the mountains we face are economic. Some of us are facing some pretty big financial mountains that we need to try to climb. Recession, unemployment, outsourcing, downsizing has affected so many families. And then for some of us, the mountain is spiritual. It's that creeping doubt inside of us that won't let us have peace in our faith. Sin and evil that has hold of us and won't let us go. It's corruption in various places among people who are charged with having responsibility for others. We face so many mountains. I wouldn't blame anybody in here for saying, like the psalmist says, where is our help going to come from? Who's going to help us? And when we say that, we're acknowledging that we can't do it by ourselves. You know, Lent is not so much a time that it's not just about what we are able to accomplish, by giving up something for Lent and all of that. But it's about what God is able to accomplish through us. It's about what God can do when we are totally dependent on God. You see, that's the problem. Many of us refuse to admit our dependence on God. We're trying to be, God unto ourselves. Only when we admit that we are helpless and hopeless can God come in and do what only God can do to save us. And so the psalmist answers his question about where help is going to come from by saying, "My help comes from the Lord, who made the heavens and the earth." Now I want to say that God, in spite of all of the difficulties that we face going through life, continues to call us to new challenges. He continues to call us to leave home, to take the journey. You know, Abraham was doing all right, but God called Abraham to leave his familiar surroundings and go to a land that I will show you. How many of us are willing to hear what God is calling us to do and to be, to change? He wants us to go from one place sometimes to another place, to another situation. God calls us from one place to another. Sometimes he calls us to leave one job to go to another. Sometimes he calls you just to go ahead on and pursue your dream, the dream that he placed in your heart. Some of us he called to go back to school or to finish your education. And sometimes as a church, he's calling us to develop a new ministry. And we must have enough trust and confidence that God will make a way, that God will see us through no matter how high the mountains are. One of the great theological thinkers of the last century was a man by the name of Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was happened to be a black minister. He was a philosopher and an educator who some people have called him a modern-day mystic. And his writings are amazing, and you'll hear me quoting from him from time to time. And it's very interesting in his autobiography here, With Head and Heart. He talks about what it was like growing up in Florida. And he talks about how public education for black children, at that time he lived in Daytona Beach, but education ended for them at the 7th grade because there was no 8th grade. There were only 3 high schools that would receive African American children in the state of Florida. However, there were a number of private church-supported schools. And Howard Thurman was a brilliant young child. And after he finished the 7th grade, his principal volunteered on his own time to teach him the 8th grade. And then he had to travel from Daytona Beach if he was going to go to high school. So he was going to go to a school in Jacksonville, Florida, called Florida Baptist Academy. And being of poor means, being of humble means, he was going to have to stay with a cousin and his wife, and in exchange for doing chores around the house, he would be given a room and 1 meal a day. Well, the time came when he was ready to leave for Jacksonville, and he bought an old trunk to pack his stuff in, and the trunk didn't have any handles on it, and it didn't have a lock on it, but he tied it with rope around and around. And he went and said goodbye to everybody and went to the train station. And when he got there, he bought his ticket. But the ticket agent refused to check his luggage with his ticket because the regulation said that the ticket had to be affixed to the handle of the suitcase and of the luggage, and it didn't have a handle. So the only way he would be able to send his trunk to Jacksonville is to ship it express. But the boy only had $1 and a few pennies left after he had bought his ticket. And so he just sat down, he said, in that railway station and just cried his eyes out because this little boy was not going to be able to go to Jacksonville. And he said he was crying and crying, and after a while, he said he opened his eyes, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a pair of work boots, men's work boots. And he said he looked up, and he said it was a man standing there who was wearing overalls and a denim cap. And he said that it happened to be a black man. He said that the man looked down at him, and he said, "Boy, what in the devil are you crying about?" He said he explained his situation to the man. And after hearing his story, the man said, "Well, if you're trying that hard to get out of this cotton-picking town to get an education, the least I can do is to help you. Come with me." And he took his boy around to the agent, and he said, "How much does it cost to send this boy's trunk to Jacksonville?" The man took the money out, paid for the bag to be shipped to Jacksonville. He gave Howard Thurman the receipt, and then Howard Thurman said that the man turned around and walked away, and he never saw him again. And I just want you to see how God helps us, how God makes a way for us. He went on to high school, but his 4 years in high school, he said, were not easy. He struggled. He never had enough food to eat. And then he found out after his first year that he was not going to be able to stay the second year with this family. And so he was going to have to try to raise $5 a month to pay his room and board somewhere. And he found out that a man lived in the community called Mr. James Gamble of Procter & Gamble Soap Company. He wrote Mr. Gamble a letter asking for a loan. Make a long story short, he got an answer back from Mr. Gamble. And Mr. Gamble said that he was going to give him $5 a month for 9 months, beginning in September of his second year. Everybody needs help sometime. And it can make a huge difference in the life of a person when that help arrives. As I said, Howard Thurman never saw that man in the railway station again, but I noticed here in the cover of his book, he dedicates the book this way. He said, "To the stranger in the railroad station in Daytona Beach, who restored my broken dream 65 years ago. Everybody needs help now and then. That's the first point. The second point is that the way that God helps us, the way that He comes to our aid, is that sometimes God deputizes us to be His angels to each other. Right now, that young man I mentioned earlier, Stephen Howard, is sitting in the jail. And it is a time when God wants to deputize us to be angels. And so, Brother Stephen, we're coming alongside you this morning to offer whatever we can in the way of help, because we sense that this is the test of your life. And so we're going to pray for you in the way that the church prayed for Peter when he was in jail. And while the church was still praying, Peter knocked on the door. God is able to make a way out of no way. God is able to help us when help looks like it's far away and nowhere near. God will take care of us. Be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide, God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day or all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. All you may need, he will provide. God will take care of you. Nothing you ask will be denied. God will take care of you. Oh, God will take care of you through every day, over all the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. Sometimes the message doesn't seem to get through, but God can make it very simple sometimes. God will take care of us. No matter what may be the test, God will take care of you. Lean, weary one upon his breast, God will take care of you. Oh, God will take care of you through every day and over all the way. He will take care of you. God Take care